Escape in the storm. The thunder rolled across the sky like a warning as Nora Patel stared at her reflection in the mirror. The elaborate red and gold lehenga felt like a cage wrapped around her body, the intricate embroidery weighing her down as if each golden thread had been spun from lead. Tonight was her engagement party, her prison sentence disguised as celebration. 20 minutes, Nora. Her mother's voice carried through the door. The Sharma family is already arriving. Mr. Sharma is very particular about punctuality. Nora's fingers trembled as she adjusted the heavy necklace around her throat. Raj Sharma, 42 years old, twice divorced, business associate of her father's, her future husband according to the family decree issued 3 weeks ago. What does it matter what you want? Her father had said when she protested. This union secures our family's future. Your duty is to obey. A flash of lightning illuminated her bedroom, casting harsh shadows across the walls. The woman in the mirror looked like a stranger, eyes hollow, face pale beneath careful makeup. At 26, Nora had built a secret life for herself. Online coding classes, a small but growing portfolio of web design work, dreams of independence. All of it meant nothing to her parents, who saw her only as currency in their business dealings. The window rattled as another thunderclap shook the house. Through the glass, Nora could see the rain coming down in sheets, washing away the careful landscaping of their suburban home. Something about the chaos of the storm called to her. Without allowing herself time to reconsider, she unclasped the heavy necklace and placed it on the dresser. She kicked off the ornate heels and pulled a backpack from beneath her bed, packed 3 days ago when the weight of her future had first become unbearable. Inside, a change of clothes, her laptop, the emergency cash she'd been saving, and her passport. Changing quickly into jeans and a dark sweatshirt, Nora slung the backpack over her shoulder. She glanced once more at the lehenga pooled on the floor, tens of thousands of dollars of fabric and expectation abandoned like shed skin. I'm sorry, she whispered, though she wasn't sure who she was apologizing to. The rain soaked her instantly as she climbed through the window and down the garden trellis, the very path she'd used as a teenager sneaking out to normal, forbidden experiences like movies and coffee with friends. The irony wasn't lost on her that at 26, she was still climbing out windows to claim her freedom. Nora ran through the suburban streets, rain plastering her hair to her face, thunder masking the sound of her gasping breaths. She had no destination in mind, only away. Away from the Sharmas with their appraising eyes, away from her father's business arrangements, away from a life mapped out without her consent. 3 miles and 40 minutes later, she found herself in an industrial district, shivering and disoriented. The rain had eased to a steady drizzle, but night was falling, bringing with it new fears. Headlights swept across her as a car turned down the street, and Nora ducked instinctively behind a dumpster, her heart hammering against her ribs. When the vehicle passed, she emerged, scanning desperately for somewhere, anywhere, to shelter for the night. The neon sign of Reed's Auto Repair flickered dimly in the distance, a warm yellow light spilling from its open bay doors despite the late hour. Nora approached cautiously, peering inside. The garage was cluttered but clean, with 2 vehicles raised on lifts and various parts organized on metal shelves. A radio played softly from somewhere within, the gentle strains of jazz contrasting with the mechanical surroundings. Hello, she called hesitantly, stepping just inside the doorway. I'm sorry to bother you, but... A metallic clang followed by a muffled curse came from beneath a vintage Mustang. A moment later, a man rolled out on a creeper, a wrench in one hand. He sat up and Nora took an involuntary step back. He was perhaps 30 with dark hair pulled back in a short ponytail, a 2-day stubble shadowing his jaw. Grease streaked his forearms and smudged one cheekbone, but his eyes, a startling, clear blue, were kind as they assessed her. You're soaked through, he said, his voice deeper than she expected with a gentleness that made her throat tighten. He stood in one fluid motion, reaching for a clean shop rag to wipe his hands, and shaking. Are you okay? Nora opened her mouth to say yes, to apologize for the intrusion and back away. Instead, to her horror, a sob escaped. The man's expression shifted from concern to alarm. Hey, it's all right, he said, keeping his distance as if sensing her wariness. I'm Jasper. Jasper Reed, this is my shop, he gestured around them. And you look like you could use a place to sit down and get warm. Nora hugged her arms around herself, weighing her options. The night stretched dark and unknown beyond the garage doors. Inside was a stranger, but a stranger who wasn't looking at her like property to be traded. "I'm Nora," she managed finally. "And I don't know where else to go." Jasper nodded as if this was a perfectly reasonable thing to say on a rainy Tuesday night. "Well, Nora," he said, "I've got coffee in the office. It's not great, but it's hot. And there's a space heater. How about we start there?" As he led her toward a small office at the back of the garage, maintaining a respectful distance, Nora felt something unfamiliar unfurl in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it as the first fragile tendril of hope. Grease and grace. The office at the back of Reed's Auto Repair was small but surprisingly cozy. A worn leather couch occupied one wall, across from a desk cluttered with invoices and car manuals. Jasper gestured for Nora to sit while he switched on a space heater that hummed to life with reassuring warmth. "Black, or with enough sugar to make it drinkable?" he asked, pouring coffee from a battered pot. "Sugar, please," Nora answered, her voice still unsteady. Her hands curled around the mug he offered, absorbing its heat like a lifeline. Jasper settled into his desk chair, giving her space. He didn't press for explanations, didn't demand to know why a woman in designer jeans, despite the mud stains, with perfectly manicured nails, though chipped now, had shown up drenched and desperate at his garage. Instead, he talked softly about neutral things: the vintage Mustang he was restoring, the forecast promising clear skies tomorrow, the jazz musician on the radio. "You can crash on the couch tonight if you need to," he offered eventually. "There's a shower in the back. Not fancy, but hot water works. I've got some clean shop shirts that'll swallow you whole but beat sleeping in wet clothes." Nora studied him over the rim of her mug. "Why would you help a stranger like this?" A shadow passed over Jasper's features. "Let's just say I know what it's like to need a safe place." He stood, stretching. "I live upstairs. Shop closes at 8, opens at 7. You'll have privacy." That first night, Nora barely slept, startling at every sound, half expecting her father's associates to burst through the door. But morning came peacefully, sunlight streaming through the high windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air. She found Jasper already at work, his head under the hood of a sedan, sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms. A customer stood nearby, an elderly woman who beamed when Jasper straightened up. "Mrs. Hernandez, you're good to go. Just a loose connection in the alternator," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "No charge." "Nonsense," the woman protested, pressing a container into his hands. "My tamales. Ricardo says you're too skinny." After Mrs. Hernandez left, Nora stepped forward. "You didn't charge her," Jasper shrugged. "Her husband died last year. Fixed cars for 40 years at the dealership downtown. She brings me food, I keep her car running." "I can't stay for free," Nora said suddenly. "I need to pay my way." Jasper's eyebrows rose. "You know anything about cars?" "No," she admitted. "But I can learn. And I know computers. Your invoicing system looks prehistoric." To her surprise, Jasper laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his serious face. "Fair enough. You got yourself a deal. Nora, no last name." The days that followed established a routine that felt like borrowed time to Nora. During the day, she modernized Jasper's chaotic filing system, built him a simple website, and gradually learned to identify tools when he called for them from beneath a car. At night, she slept on the office couch, jumping at shadows but waking each morning still free. She told him pieces of her story in careful fragments: her controlling family, the arranged marriage, her secret coding classes. She didn't mention names or specific locations, still fearful of being found. Jasper listened without judgment, sharing little of himself in return. She gathered he was self-taught, that he'd been in this location for 3 years, that he had no family nearby. The mystery surrounding him only deepened her curiosity. 2 weeks into her stay, a sleek Mercedes pulled up outside. Nora froze at her desk, panic rising in her throat before realizing it wasn't her father's car. A woman in an impeccable suit emerged, her heels clicking against the concrete floor as she entered. "Mr. Reed," she said formally, ignoring Nora completely. "I have another message from the board." Jasper sighed, wiping grease from his hands. "And I have the same answer as last time, Ms. Winters, not interested." The woman's lips thinned. "Your father's condition is deteriorating. This stubbornness serves no one." She placed a thick envelope on the workbench. "The offer has been increased. Please reconsider." After she left, Nora found Jasper staring at the unopened envelope, his expression unreadable. "Bored?" she asked hesitantly. "Your father?" "It's complicated," he said, his voice tight. He slid the envelope into a drawer without opening it. "Nothing for you to worry about." That evening, something shifted between them. Perhaps it was the shared knowledge of secrets kept, or the realization that they were both hiding from something. When Jasper invited her to join him for dinner upstairs instead of eating alone in the office, Nora accepted. His apartment was as unexpected as everything else about him, sparsely furnished but with surprising touches of elegance. Bookshelves lined with classics and engineering texts, a record player with an impressive vinyl collection, and a kitchen where he moved with surprising confidence. "You cook," she observed as he prepared a simple but aromatic pasta dish. "Another useful skill when you're on your own," he replied, the ghost of a smile playing at his lips over dinner. Nora found herself talking about her dreams, the web design business she hoped to build, places she wanted to see. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to imagine a future beyond hiding. "What about you?" she asked. "Has this always been your dream? This garage?" Something flickered in Jasper's eyes, an old pain quickly masked. "I'm exactly where I need to be," he said quietly. Found that out the hard way. Later, as she helped him wash dishes, their hands brushed beneath the soapy water. The contact was brief but electric, sending an unexpected current through Nora's body. She looked up to find Jasper watching her, his blue eyes intense with something unspoken. The moment stretched between them, possibility hanging in the air like suspended time. Then the phone rang, shattering the silence. Jasper answered, his expression shifting to concern. "I'll be right there," he said before hanging up. "Mrs. Hernandez's car broke down a few miles away. I need to go tow her in." When he returned hours later, the moment had passed, but something had fundamentally changed. Nora lay awake on the office couch, replaying the brush of his hands, the look in his eyes, the feeling of standing at the edge of something both terrifying and wonderful. For the first time in her life, Nora wasn't running from something, she was running toward something. And that something had grease-stained hands, kind eyes, and secrets that matched her own. Wheels of Fortune. The rhythmic clink of metal against metal had become a soothing soundtrack to Nora's days. After a month at Reed's Auto Repair, she could not only differentiate between a socket wrench and a torque wrench, but also use them with growing confidence. The garage had transformed from a hiding place into something that felt dangerously like home. "Try it now," Jasper called from beneath a Honda Civic, his voice muffled. Nora turned the ignition key, and the engine roared to life with a healthy purr. "We did it," she exclaimed, unable to contain her smile. Jasper rolled out on the creeper, a matching grin on his oil-smudged face. "You did it," he corrected. "That was your diagnosis, your repair." The pride warming her chest was unfamiliar. Her parents had never praised her accomplishments, only pointed out where she fell short. Jasper's teaching style was the opposite. Patient encouragement, celebrating small victories, gentle correction when needed. "I never thought I'd enjoy getting my hands dirty," Nora admitted, examining her now calloused palms. The expensive manicure was long gone, replaced by short, practical nails and skin toughened by honest work. "Some people are happiest when they're making something work again," Jasper said, his eyes lingering on her face a moment longer than necessary before he looked away. These moments had been happening more frequently. Glances held too long, accidental touches that didn't feel entirely accidental, conversations that stretched late into the night. The bell above the door jingled and they both turned. Nora's breath caught when a tall, well-dressed man entered. For a heart-stopping second, she feared it was someone sent by her father, but the stranger's gaze fixed solely on Jasper, whose expression had gone completely blank. "Jasper," the man said stiffly, "you're looking rustic." "Elliot," Jasper replied, his voice suddenly formal. "This is a surprise." The tension between them was palpable. Nora retreated to the office but kept the door cracked, her curiosity overwhelming her sense of propriety. "I wouldn't be here if it weren't urgent," Elliot was saying. "Father had another stroke last night. The doctors say," his voice faltered, "they're not optimistic. He's asking for you." A heavy silence filled the garage. When Jasper finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "7 years of silence and now he wants to see me?" He's dying, Jasper. Elliot's composure cracked. Whatever happened between you two, isn't it time to let it go? What happened? Jasper said with quiet intensity. Was that he disowned me for choosing my own path. He made it very clear he had only one son. Elliot ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, a gesture so similar to Jasper's that Nora suddenly saw the resemblance between them. The board is in chaos. The shareholders are panicking. Without a clear succession plan. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Jasper cut in. Not father's deathbed remorse, but Kingsley Motors' stock price, Kingsley Motors. The name hit Nora like a physical blow. Kingsley Motors was one of the largest automobile manufacturers in the country, a corporate giant with dealerships in every major city. And Jasper, her Jasper, with his worn jeans and calloused hands, was somehow connected to it. Father named you in the succession plan, Elliot continued. Despite everything, he never changed it. Half the company will be yours with conditions. I don't want it. It doesn't matter what you want. Elliot's carefully controlled facade finally shattered. Thousands of jobs are at stake. Our family legacy. A legacy built on crushing smaller companies and exploiting workers, Jasper fired back. I watched what it did to him, Elliot. What it did to you. That's why I left. The argument continued, details spilling out that painted a picture Nora struggled to reconcile with the man she thought she knew. Jasper wasn't just Jasper Reed, garage owner. He was Jasper Kingsley, estranged heir to a fortune, a man who had walked away from wealth and privilege to build something with his own hands. When Elliot finally left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows, Nora remained frozen in the office. Through the crack, she watched Jasper brace himself against the workbench, head bowed, shoulders rigid with tension. She should give him privacy, she knew. Instead, she found herself moving toward him, drawn by the pain evident in every line of his body. Jasper, she said softly. He turned, and the naked vulnerability in his expression made her heart ache. How much did you hear? Enough, she admitted. You're a Kingsley. A bitter laugh escaped him. Not for years. I left that name behind when I left that life. Why? The question was simple but loaded. Jasper was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. Finally, he gestured toward the door. Let's go for a drive. They took the restored Mustang, Jasper driving with one hand on the wheel as they left the city behind. The autumn countryside rolled past, trees aflame with red and gold. Neither spoke until they reached a lookout point overlooking a river valley. My father built Kingsley Motors from nothing, Jasper said, staring out at the vista. But somewhere along the way, the company became more important than anything else. More important than ethics, more important than family. He turned to face her. I studied engineering, worked my way up through every department. I thought I could change things from within. What happened? Nora asked. I discovered the company was cutting corners on safety features in our economy models, the ones sold primarily in developing countries. His jaw tightened. When I brought the evidence to my father, he had the report buried. When I threatened to go public, he offered me a promotion. The disgust in his voice was palpable. That night, I packed a bag, emptied my personal account, and left. And became Jasper Reed, Nora finished quietly. He nodded. Built this place from nothing. On my terms. With my hands. His gaze dropped to those hands. Strong, capable, honest. I've never regretted it. Until now, maybe. Because your father is dying? Because thousands of people rely on Kingsley Motors for their livelihoods. If the company falters... He didn't finish the thought. My father was a ruthless businessman, but he understood the responsibility that came with power. Elliot doesn't. He sees the company as a cash machine, not a community. The parallels to her own situation weren't lost on Nora. Both of them running from family expectations, both hiding from responsibilities that felt like chains. What will you do? She asked. Jasper turned to her, his blue eyes troubled. I don't know, but I can't hide here forever, pretending the past doesn't exist. He reached out hesitantly, his fingers tracing the curve of her cheek, just like you can't. The touch sent warmth cascading through her, but his words froze it midstream. What do you mean? Nora Patel, he said gently. Daughter of Vikash Patel, CEO of Patel Tech Solutions. Your engagement announcement was in the business section the day you arrived at my garage. Shock rendered her speechless. He'd known all along, known exactly who she was running from. Why didn't you say anything? She finally managed. For the same reason you didn't tell me your last name, he replied. Some truths are too heavy to carry at first. We both needed the simplicity of being just Nora and just Jasper for a while. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the valley, they sat in silence, each contemplating the crossroads before them. The simple existence they'd carved out together suddenly seemed as fragile as glass, threatened by the weight of names and expectations they'd tried to leave behind. Come with me, Jasper said suddenly, to see my father, to face whatever comes next. The invitation hung between them, freighted with meaning beyond the simple words. It wasn't just about visiting a dying man. It was about stepping out of hiding, about facing the world not as fugitives but as who they truly were. Nora thought about the cozy garage that had become her sanctuary, about the simplicity of their days together, about the growing feelings she couldn't deny. Then she thought about the lifetime of running that would follow if she never stopped to face what she was running from. Yes, she said finally, I'll come with you. As they drove back toward the city, the future looming uncertain before them, Nora reached across the console and laced her fingers with Jasper's. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The mechanic and the runaway, the heir and the heiress. Two people who had found each other while trying to lose themselves. Oil and water, the Kingsley estate sprawled across 30 acres of manicured grounds, the main house a monument to old money and power. As Jasper navigated the winding driveway in his Mustang, conspicuously modest among the luxury vehicles, parked outside, Nora felt his tension in the white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel. It's not too late to turn around, she offered, quietly. Jasper's laugh held no humor. 7 years too late, actually. He glanced at her, his expression softening. But having you here makes it bearable. They'd spent the 3-hour drive preparing, Jasper briefing her on the family dynamics, Nora helping him anticipate the business questions likely to arise. What remained unspoken was what would happen after this visit, how this abrupt collision with reality would affect what had grown between them. A butler greeted them at the door with barely concealed shock at Jasper's appearance. The worn jeans and work boots that looked so natural in the garage seemed deliberately defiant in these surroundings. Master Jasper, the man said, recovering quickly, your father is in the East Wing. The doctor is with him now. As they moved through the house, Nora absorbed the details, original artwork on the walls, antique furniture that had graced magazine covers, subtle displays of wealth that made her parents' ostentatious home seem gauche by comparison. This was old money worn with the comfort of generations. Elliot intercepted them in the hallway, his expression tightly controlled. You came. His gaze shifted to Nora, curiosity briefly overriding hostility. With company. This is Nora, Jasper said simply, offering no explanation. Is he conscious? Intermittently. The board members have been arriving all morning. Elliot lowered his voice. They're circling like vultures, Jasper. Without a united front from both of us, I'm here to see our father, not to stage a corporate coup. Jasper cut him off. The business can wait until he's either recovered or buried. The East Wing held a medical suite that rivaled most hospitals. In the center of the room, connected to monitors and IVs, lay Harrison Kingsley, a once imposing man now diminished, his skin ashen against the white sheets. Jasper faltered at the threshold. Nora slipped her hand into his, squeezing gently. The small gesture seemed to steady him, and he approached the bed. Whether by coincidence or some subconscious awareness, Harrison's eyes fluttered open. Recognition dawned slowly, followed by something that might have been relief. The prodigal returns, he said, his voice a rasp of its former authority. Hello, Father, Jasper replied, his tone carefully neutral. Harrison's gaze shifted to Nora, one eyebrow raising in question. And who is this? Not the garage accountant, surely. The casual arrogance, even from a hospital bed, made Nora understand Jasper's rebellion more viscerally than any explanation could have. Before Jasper could answer, she stepped forward. I'm Nora Patel, she said, meeting the old man's shrewd gaze directly. I work with your son at Reed's Auto Repair. A flicker of recognition crossed Harrison's face. Vikash Patel's daughter, the runaway bride. When Nora stiffened in surprise, he gave a ghost of a smile. I may be dying, but I still read the business pages. Your disappearance caused quite the stir. The Next hour unfolded in tense conversation, Harrison alternating between reminiscence and sharp business, questions that tested Jasper's knowledge of the company he'd left behind. To Nora's surprise, Jasper answered each query with detailed understanding, revealing that he'd been following Kingsley Motors' trajectory even in his absence. When Harrison's energy began to flag, he dismissed Elliot and the doctor, asking Jasper to stay. With visible reluctance, Nora left them to their privacy, finding herself alone in the vast hallway. She wandered into what appeared to be a library, only to find it occupied by a group of men and women in expensive suits, the board members Elliot had mentioned. Their conversation halted abruptly at her entrance. "Ms. Patel," one of the men said, stepping forward with calculated warmth. "Thomas Whitmore, Chief Financial Officer. We were hoping to speak with you." The ambush was skillfully executed. They knew exactly who she was, had clearly discussed her presence before she entered. Nora squared her shoulders, channeling the business acumen she'd absorbed growing up in her father's house. "About what, Mr. Whitmore?" "Your influence with Jasper Kingsley is evident," a woman in a severe gray suit interjected. "We hope you understand what's at stake here. Kingsley Motors employs over 20,000 people globally. Without stable leadership, you're asking me to convince him to return," Nora stated flatly. Thomas smiled thinly. "We're merely suggesting that someone with your background would understand the importance of duty. Your own family company is exactly what I ran away from," Nora finished, anger flaring. "If you know who I am, then you know I reject the idea that family legacy trumps personal choice." "How principled," the woman said, her tone making it clear this was not a compliment. "But perhaps you should consider that your relationship with Jasper places you in a unique position, one that could be quite advantageous." The implication was clear. Help them bring Jasper back to the fold and they would ensure she benefited. The naked calculation disgusted her, but before she could respond, another voice spoke from the doorway. "My brother makes his own decisions." Elliot stood there, his expression unreadable. "And Ms. Patel is his guest, not a pawn in your boardroom games." He gestured for Nora to follow him, leading her away from the surprised executives. In a sunroom overlooking the gardens, Elliot poured 2 cups of tea with the precision of someone buying time to organize his thoughts. "They're afraid," he said finally. "The company is at a crossroads. Our major competitor is launching an electric vehicle that could revolutionize the market. Without innovation, Kingsley Motors becomes obsolete within a decade. And they think Jasper is that innovation," Nora surmised. Elliot nodded. "My brother was always the visionary. I'm the practical one. Good with numbers, solid with shareholders. But Jasper?" A hint of admiration crept into his voice. "Jasper sees around corners. He won't give up his garage," Nora said with certainty. "No," Elliot agreed. "But he might not have to." He studied her thoughtfully. "You love him." It wasn't a question, and Nora didn't treat it as one. "I do." "Then you should know that your father's representatives arrived this morning." The words hit her like a physical blow. "What?" Apparently Harrison's condition made the news. Someone connected the dots when Jasper was seen entering the estate. Elliot's expression held genuine regret. "Your father knows where you are, Nora. He's on his way here now." The carefully constructed sanctuary of the past month shattered around her. Jasper's world was pulling him back toward responsibilities he'd fled. Now her world was crashing in as well. The timing couldn't have been worse, or perhaps more inevitable. When she found Jasper again, he was standing alone in his father's room, staring out the window. Harrison appeared to be sleeping. "He's offering me a compromise," Jasper said without turning. "Control of a new division. Sustainable transportation, electric vehicles, the future of the company. Without having to step into his shoes entirely." His voice was troubled. "He says he was wrong to try to force me into a mold. That losing me made him realize his mistakes. Do you believe him?" Nora asked. Jasper turned, his expression conflicted. "Deathbed conversions are convenient. But the offer itself," he shook his head. "It's exactly what I wanted 7 years ago. The chance to build something that matters within the company, without sacrificing my principles." "What about the garage?" "I could keep it. Run it on weekends. Have a foot in both worlds." His eyes searched hers. "It's a good offer, Nora. Maybe even the right thing to do." Before she could respond, the door opened and Elliot appeared. "Nora, I'm sorry," he insisted. He stepped aside, revealing Vikash Patel, Nora's father. The hours that followed were a blur of confrontation and revelation. Vikash, initially cold and demanding, had been genuinely frightened by her disappearance. The engagement to Raj Sharma had been dissolved after the scandal of the runaway bride proved too much for the businessman's reputation. It wasn't about making a point, Nora interrupted. It was about claiming my life as my own. The conversation circled painfully, her father alternating between appeals to family duty and thinly veiled threats about her future if she continued this rebellion. When he finally noticed Jasper's presence, his demeanor shifted to calculation. Kingsley, he acknowledged with grudging respect. I should have known she'd gravitate toward another dynasty even in flight. Mr. Patel, Jasper replied coolly. Your daughter has been working at my garage. She's talented, dedicated, and deserving of your respect, not your control. The tension between the two men was palpable, representatives of different worlds yet similarly bound by family expectations. As the confrontation stretched into evening, Nora felt increasingly torn between her growing feelings for Jasper and the undeniable pull of family ties, however complicated. Later, alone in the guest room Elliot had arranged for her, Nora stared at the ceiling, paralyzed by the choices before her. Return home, mending the family rift but surrendering her independence? Stay with Jasper, only to watch him potentially be absorbed back into the world he'd fled? Or strike out completely alone, abandoning both the past and the present to forge an uncertain future? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She opened the door to find Jasper, looking as conflicted as she felt. I'm taking the offer, he said without preamble. Father signed the paperwork tonight. I'll be heading the new Kingsley Electric division, reporting directly to the board, not to Elliot or my father. Nora's heart sank, even as she forced a smile. That's wonderful, Jasper. It's what you should do. Is it? His blue eyes searched hers. Because it feels like I'm betraying everything I built. Everything we built. The unspoken question hung between them. What happened to them now? The simple life they'd shared at the garage seemed impossible to reconcile with Jasper's new corporate position, or with Nora's complicated family situation. My father wants me home by morning, Nora said quietly. He's promised to support my independence if I stop this foolishness, as he puts it. And will you go? The question was loaded with meaning beyond the simple words. Nora thought of the garage that had become home, of the man before her who had shown her what freedom truly meant. Then she thought of her mother's tears, of family obligations that, while stifling, came from a place of cultural values she couldn't entirely dismiss. I don't know, she admitted, the words catching in her throat. Everything's happening so fast. Yesterday we were fixing Mrs. Hernandez's Honda. Today we're back in the worlds we tried to escape, Jasper finished. He reached out, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw with exquisite gentleness. But we're not the same people who ran away, Nora. Whatever happens next, remember that. He left her then, the ghost of his touch lingering on her skin. Nora turned back to the window, watching storm clouds gather on the horizon, a fitting metaphor for the turbulence in her heart. The simple happiness she'd found in a mechanic's garage seemed to be slipping through her fingers like fine sand, impossible to hold on to in the face of reality's harsh winds. Oil and water, she thought bitterly, two worlds that could never truly mix no matter how vigorously they were stirred together. By morning she would have to choose, and no matter which path she took, something precious would be lost in the decision. The road home dawn broke over the Kingsley estate, painting the manicured grounds in shades of gold and amber. Nora stood at the window of her guest room, watching as her father's driver loaded her small backpack into the waiting town car. The bag seemed pathetically inadequate, a month of life reduced to a few possessions, none of which contained what mattered most. A soft knock at the door made her heart leap, but it was Elliot who entered, not Jasper. He's with the lawyers, Elliot explained, reading her disappointment. The transition paperwork is extensive. Of course, Nora replied, forcing neutrality into her voice. Business first. Elliot studied her with surprising insight. You know, when Jasper first left, I was furious with him. Thought he was selfish, abandoning his responsibilities. A rueful smile crossed his face. Took me years to understand he wasn't running away from responsibility. He was running toward a different kind of freedom. And now? Nora asked, Now I think we need both kinds of people in this world. Those who shoulder the weight of institutions, and those brave enough to question why the weight exists at all. He handed her a business card. Your web design work for Jasper's Garage was excellent. Kingsley Motors could use that kind of fresh perspective. The gesture was unexpected. A business overture and an olive branch rolled into one. Nora took the card, tucking it into her pocket. Thank you, she said sincerely, for everything, including last night with the board members. Elliot nodded, then hesitated at the door. He loves that garage. More than that, he loves what it represents. Don't let him forget that. Nora. Before she could ask what he meant, he was gone, leaving her alone with her thoughts in the waiting car below. Vikash Patel was punctual as always, arriving precisely at 8 to escort his daughter home. The night's conversations had left a fragile truce between them. He had agreed to stop pressuring her about marriage, and she had agreed to return home while establishing her independence more conventionally. The car is ready, he said, his tone softer than she remembered. Your mother is preparing your favorite dinner. I need to say goodbye to Jasper, Nora replied, gathering her courage. Her father's expression tightened, but he nodded. 5 minutes. I'll wait in the car. The Kingsley house was a maze of corridors and closed doors. Nora navigated them blindly, heart pounding as she searched for Jasper among the meeting rooms Elliot had mentioned. She found him instead in the garage, not the opulent space housing the family's collection of luxury vehicles, but a smaller workshop tucked behind it. Jasper stood with his back to her, hands braced on a workbench, head bowed over what appeared to be blueprints. He was dressed in a suit that fit him perfectly but seemed to sit uneasily on his frame, as if the fabric itself recognized the contradiction. Leaving without saying goodbye, he asked without turning, some sixth sense alerting him to her presence. I was looking for you, Nora said, her voice small in the cavernous space. He turned then, and the sight of him in corporate attire, so different from the grease-stained mechanic she'd grown to love, made her heart ache with the distance already growing between them. Your father's waiting, I assume. It wasn't a question. Back to the life of Nora Patel, tech heiress. And you're back to being Jasper Kingsley, corporate scion, she countered, hurt making her voice sharper than intended. His expression softened. Touché. He gestured to the blueprints on the workbench. Want to see what bought my soul? She moved closer, examining the detailed schematics. An electric vehicle? Not just any electric vehicle. One built with sustainable materials, designed to be affordable for middle-class families, with battery technology that doubles the current range. His eyes lit with the passion she'd first noticed when he talked about engines. This could change transportation for millions of people, Nora. Make clean energy accessible beyond the wealthy elite. The vision was compelling, his enthusiasm infectious. This was the Jasper she knew, the man who saw potential where others saw limitations, who believed in building things that mattered. It's amazing, she said sincerely. You'll change the industry. Maybe. His smile faded. If I don't get swallowed by board meetings and shareholder concerns first. He looked down at his tailored suit with faint disgust. Already feels like I'm wearing a costume. Nora reached out impulsively, straightening his tie. It's still you underneath, Jasper. The man who fixed Mrs. Hernandez's car for tamales. The man who took in a stranger on a rainy night. His hands came up to cover hers, holding them against his chest. Come work with me, he said suddenly. Here at Kingsley. Your web design skills, your fresh perspective, we could build this new division together. The offer was tempting, a way to keep him in her life, to be part of something revolutionary. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw the shadow of compromise there, the first hints of the corporate world already reshaping him. I can't, she said gently. Not now. Pain flashed across his features. Because of your father? Because of us. She stepped back, creating space to think clearly. Jasper, look at what's happening. One day at this estate, and we're already becoming different people. You in a suit, me considering corporate offers. This place, these expectations, they change you without you even noticing. So we just give up? Go our separate ways? The hurt in his voice mirrored the ache in her chest. No. Nora took a deep breath, certainty finally crystallizing after a night of confusion. We remember who we are, who we became when we were free to choose. Understanding dawned slowly in his eyes. The garage, she nodded. Your father's offer lets you keep it, right? Not as a hobby, Jasper. As your foundation. The place where you remember why you're doing all this. She gestured to the blueprints. These cars aren't just about sustainable technology. They're about freedom. The freedom you found when you walked away from all this. The freedom you gave me when you took me in. Something shifted in his expression. Realization, then resolve. You're not going back to your father's house, are you? A smile tugged at her lips. I'm going home. But first, I need to face my family honestly. No more running away. Running toward, like you said. She reached for his hand. I'm asking for 3 months. Time for me to establish my web design business independently. To make peace with my family on my terms. Time for you to find your balance between this world and the one you built. And, after 3 months, he asked, hope kindling in his eyes. After 3 months, I'll meet you at Reed's Auto Repair. She squeezed his hand. If you still want a partner who prefers grease under her nails to corporate boardrooms. 3 months, he repeated, pulling her close. I'll be there. Even if I have to fight the entire Kingsley board of directors. Their goodbye was bittersweet, laden with promises and possibilities. As Nora walked toward her father's waiting car, each step felt not like retreat, but like progress. Movement toward a future she was choosing with clear eyes and full heart. The 3 months that followed were transformative for them both. Nora returned to her family home not as a dutiful daughter, but as a woman with boundaries and ambitions of her own. The difficult conversations that followed cleared decades of misunderstanding. Her mother, initially bewildered by her transformation, gradually became her strongest ally. Her father, though still struggling with her independence, respected her enough to fund her startup web design business as a legitimate investment, rather than a hobby to be tolerated. She worked tirelessly, building a client base beyond her father's connections, specializing in sites for small businesses like the one that had given her shelter. Each night, she exchanged emails with Jasper, sharing victories and frustrations, maintaining the connection that had begun in grease and grit. Jasper's path was equally challenging. The launch of Kingsley Electric faced corporate resistance, shareholder skepticism, and the constant pressure to compromise his vision for quarterly profits. Each weekend, he escaped to Reed's Auto Repair, working on regular cars for regular people, remembering why the electric vehicle project mattered beyond stock prices and market share. His emails to Nora became a lifeline, the place where he could voice doubts, celebrate breakthroughs, and plan for a future that balanced responsibility with personal freedom. On the final day of the 3rd month, snow fell gently over the city, coating the streets in pristine white. Nora drove her modest used car to the familiar industrial district, heart pounding as Reed's Auto Repair came into view. The neon sign glowed warmly against the twilight sky, a beacon calling her home. The garage bay was open despite the weather, jazz playing softly inside. Jasper stood by the vintage Mustang, not in a corporate suit but in his familiar work clothes, a smudge of grease on one cheekbone. The sight of him, authentically, unapologetically himself, made her throat tight with emotion. He looked up as she entered, his face breaking into the smile she'd carried in her heart for 91 days. You're late, he said, his voice warm with teasing. I was beginning to think the tech mogul had forgotten about the humble mechanic. Never, she replied, crossing the space between them. Though I did bring a business proposition along with my heart. His eyebrow raised in question as she handed him a folder. Inside were the incorporation papers for a new venture, Reed Patel Innovations, a small independent research firm dedicated to developing sustainable technology solutions for practical applications. I've secured 3 clients already, she explained as he read. Small companies interested in reducing their carbon footprint without Kingsley Motors' corporate price tag. We'd work directly with small businesses, testing concepts before you scale them at Kingsley Electric. Jasper looked from the papers to her face, amazement dawning in his eyes. A bridge between worlds. Exactly. Nora smiled. You don't have to choose between responsibility and freedom, Jasper. Neither do I. We can build something that honors both. He set the folder aside carefully, then reached for her, pulling her close. I have a proposition of my own, he murmured against her hair. His hand slipped into his pocket, emerging with a small velvet box. Not a corporate merger, but a partnership of equals. Inside the box lay a ring. Not a flashy diamond, but a band of brushed titanium inlaid with a thin stripe of copper, elegant in its simplicity. I had it made from parts of the first engine we rebuilt together, he explained, suddenly nervous. Too unconventional? Tears blurred Nora's vision as she held out her hand. Perfect, she whispered as he slipped it onto her finger. Absolutely perfect. Outside, snow continued to fall, transforming the industrial landscape into something magical. Inside Reed's auto repair, Jasper pulled Nora into a kiss that tasted of promise and possibility, of journeys completed and journeys yet to begin. They had each run away seeking freedom, only to discover that true freedom wasn't found in escape, but in the courage to build something authentic, a life that honored both duty and desire, responsibility and passion, roots and wings. The garage that had once been a hiding place had become something far more significant, the foundation for a future neither of them could have imagined alone. A future where grease-stained hands and corporate responsibilities coexisted, where family legacies were honored but not imprisoned by, where love transcended the boundaries of background and expectation. As they stood together in the warm light of the garage, surrounded by tools and engines and endless possibility, Nora understood with perfect clarity. They had finally found their way home.